Okay, this will be, let's see how this one turns up. It's got lots of blue and green in it. Let's see how we can make this one interesting. If we're going to enlarge it, trying to decide, make it 200%. Oh, I thought this machine didn't do the auto clear thing for a moment. Looks like it did. This one's going to be, hopefully this one will come up interesting, even though it looks kind of like there's not much colourfulness. It's just mainly blue and green, the clothing that the people in the images are wearing. So maybe if I up the magenta and maybe up the yellow and the cyan, the black, up the black a little bit. So I'm mainly concentrating on the magenta and some of the yellow. Let's see how this goes. Right, it's going to be a movement piece. Let's see what we've got to move. We've got here, sparking young minds. Extra support or needs extending. So this is to help with literacy. Hey, yeah, it's a very difficult world to live in if you can't read. So I don't know how people who are illiterate can cope, but sometimes they can't read because they've got maybe dyslexia, which makes reading very difficult. And I know someone at my work who can't read, and I just think, hey, how the fuck can he get along in this world? He can't even use the computer or YouTube. I'd go mad if I was in his shoes. But he's got a nice, loving wife who helps, and yeah, and I guess love can conquer all. It can conquer anything, pretty much. So, fortunately, he's got a loving wife. I'm so grateful I can read, and my parents pushed me very hard at an early age to read. I don't have dyslexia, so I've got no problems like that that'll prevent me from reading. So anyway, that looks really strange. It looks interesting. We're going to use that as our master. We're going to make an artwork out of it. So we're just going to throw this on the floor to recycle. But yeah, if you have dyslexia, it must be a shitty thing to have. But, you know, you can't help it. Fuck. No one ever chose to be born like that. I don't think so, somehow. Let's see what we can do with this, with the rest of this. So we're just going to go here. But I'm so glad, even though I've got disabilities of my own that prevent me from learning, well, my parents got me into school a year earlier than most of my peers, if I'm correct. And that helped. Because when you got brain damage, you know, like it makes it hard to learn, especially when you're an adult. And I hated going to school. I hated learning to read. But fortunately, unlike this guy who's got dyslexia or something similar, well, I was able to read. And my parents got me into reading early enough to compensate for the shortfall that my short-term memory and hippocampus damage and maybe other parts of the brain. So, like comprehension. So I find it hard to comprehend new things. So it's really hard learning things now. It was a lot easier to learn then than, say, it is now. So when I was 5, it was a lot easier to learn then than for me now at the age of 45. Like once upon a time I could listen to a song on a radio and remember it the first time I hear it and remember the name. But now I just have to keep listening to the same piece of music over and over again. I have to make an effort to recall what the name of the song was, who the artist was, blah, blah, blah. So that's something I'm struggling with now that I'm getting older. So I'm really pissed off that I can't remember shit like that as well as easily as I used to. But that just goes to show that my parents did the right thing by putting me through a year early. Otherwise I would have been behind. So, and I hated reading. I hated studying. Most of the times, you know, it's pointless going to TAFE, but But because I was still only a child, there was hope that I could somehow get a good grounding in literacy, and fortunately for me, that's one of the good things my parents did. Was, even though I fucking hated it and I used to scream, I can't do it, it's too hard, because it's a lot harder for me to learn than a normal student. So yeah. So I'm basically at least grateful that I'm not illiterate. My maths isn't so good, however, but I think literacy is more important, just a little bit or a fair amount, than numeracy. So let's see how this one looks. Okay, this one here. And this one, there's the mirror images to add to this interesting composition. I just nudged this one on the right, which is annoying when I do that. I nudged again. So clumsy. I feel so clumsy trying to line these up properly, as close as properly as I can. So I just got to line that up. There's a little bit of a gap there. Can't be too fucking fussy. Trying to line these segments up. So just line it up nicely as much as I can. Yeah, so there we have it. That looks really quite interesting. I think we can call that one quits.